Welcome back to The Late Show. This is your host, Young Brando, and we're live from Los Angeles. Tonight, we're going to look at the Phillips Hong Kong auction that's coming up, that is focused on Japanese tradition of watch collecting. You guys know that on this channel, we talk about all sorts of watches, but also all kinds of collecting cultures. And we always pay homage to, of course, Italian collectors and German collectors who really held the fort for decades before people finally realized that watches are not simply used or pre-owned or secondary, but are in fact valuables that are worth collecting, that are worth being passionate about, and that are worth in terms of trying to inculcate and nurture a specific kind of knowledge. And Japan, of course, has been a stronghold for watches for such a long time. That's why a lot of watch brands to this day focus their special editions on Japan. They have always some sort of limited edition that is specifically targeted to the Japanese market. Sometimes particular kinds of styles, say smaller case diameters, are tested out first in Japan because it is such a strong market. Certain trends of collection start in Japan, and obviously more recently there has been a boom in independent watchmaking, and of course that has a very strong resonation in the Japanese market as well. So we're going to look at all of that. Ryan Hoffrey, it's so lovely to see you. Of course, we have many Goldfingers in this community, including my new friend from New York, Goldfinger, who carries that name so much better than I do, although I make a hell of Goldfinger impression. He is the real embodiment of that style. So I am happily ceding that moniker to him. He has previously asked me to talk about Renaud Tixier on this channel, and I will most certainly do that quite soon, because I had a pleasure to meet both Dominique Renaud and Julien Tixier, but also Goldfinger at Cellini, New York, when they had a very special event that was organized concurrently, or rather right around Watch Time New York. So that was a great pleasure. And the minute that Dominique Renaud discovered that I speak some French, I was given a beautiful lesson in high horology and high complications from 1986 to 2000, which is the time that when he started Renaud et Papy with Gilles Papy, who is still with Audemars Piguet, and 2000 was the year that he sold off his shares to Audemars Piguet and moved on from that. But it was a great conversation. I learned a lot, and I look forward to speaking more about that and their own brand and their new watch on this channel. So I look forward to that. And obviously, as Original OC notes there, Cellini Jewelers is now an authorized dealer for RT. And thank you for the upvotes. Good evening to you as well from Chicago. But yes, without further ado, let's jump right into it. right into the auction. This is the watch that adorns my thumbnail. I'm not gonna start with that. Now, this is an auction that has some 114 lots in watches and one unique piece of Japanese calligraphy that was made for this auction. Just to avoid confusion, once again, it's not only Japanese watches. In fact, there are only a handful watches that are quote unquote properly Japanese in this auction, but every single lot is connected to Japan and the specific watch collectors culture that Japan represents. So we're gonna look at a lot of usual suspects, lots of Daytonas, even earlier Rolex pieces, including pre-Daytona chronographs, of course, a few Seikos, of course, a couple of important Japanese independents, one of which was a winner in the challenge category, and my personal favorite as well at the recent Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève, the GPHG awards, the Oscars of watches, as people like to call them, because as you guys know, we Americans can't make sense of anything outside of our periphery and outside of our culture without having a specific reference to our culture. So we'll continue to call something like GPHG the watch Oscars. That's cool, I guess, for those who don't know any better. Oz.
G'day.
Oz.
How you doing?
Did you see that Crocs hired a new creative director?
I did. My wife sent that to me.
And I
think
did
I saw it
too
on my Discord and my wife.
on Discord.
Sorry?
I sent it to you on Discord as well.
Right. Yes. I didn't look at the article yet, but hey, Crocs are making a lot of moves. And
What is I mean, what is the article going to contain, you think? Like what is the creative direction of Crocs? What does that entail?
well, Crocs have no limit, right? They've got really no limit. They've broken all limits. Like they made that sort of boot, Dallas, cowboy style boot. They've done
Amazing.
a Pringles collab where there was a pocket to store a can of Pringles in your croc. So they really have no limits. So for someone who's a creative type, I can imagine it's almost a dream job.
Yeah, I mean, I took the liberty of sending in your resume with a portfolio of custom creations that you have made, but apparently it didn't get you too far.
Not too far, no.
C3D Now, thank you so much for $5. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for this contribution. It matters a lot. And guys, we have a super chat goal, amount of $5 and up, 5 super chats that will take us into another hour. And Dark Child, who watches us from Ukraine, nice to see you, my man. How you been, Oz? Did you take a look at all at this auction?
No, I'm quite keen. I'm here in San Francisco right now, so
You are.
yeah, I've got some time.
That's great. I like it. It's a singles night.
Yeah, basically. I'm tempting fate. I'm wearing the Hulk in a new city, and but it's cold weather, so for the most part we're
Meaning that
talking about
you can hide it under your sleeve.
yes, yeah. So it's not a huge problem, but yeah, it's good. I haven't gone anywhere. Just like walk to the office and back.
Guys, you know the rules. I dropped a link to the auction listing. So if you have lots that you would like us to discuss, feel free to throw in a super chat. Ideally $5 or more, but whatever you wish to choose is up to you. It's a contribution to the channel. And you guys know this is one of the only independent channels in the watch live streaming world. So anything you put into this channel comes back to you in the way of knowledge and passion around wristwatches. But since Oz showed off his Hulk, we can take a look at its predecessor.
Original Kermit.
Yeah.
The 50th anniversary watch.
That's true. For a while, people were debating that. People were disputing that for whatever reason. I think the confusion around the actual original release date of the Rolex Submariner, whether it was 1953 or 54, had some role to play with that. But in 2003, Rolex actually officially released this as the 50th anniversary Submariner with all the kind of accoutrements that accompany any such release. The earlier versions of it, the proper anniversary watches, so to speak, are known as flat 4, right? Where the number 4 on the bezel, on the dive timing bezel, that's the 40-minute marker, looks kind of flatter rather than sharp, right? Where the two lines at the top of the 4 connect. Those usually belong to the series Y or F. The earlier, the better, of course, because that gets us closer to year 2003.
Well, there was debate at the time about whether or not it would be actually limited, as in limited production, this year or that. And, retrospectively, we do know now that it basically had a pretty decent production run, as in it ran till the end of the model. So it was definitely a weird prospect at the time. Rolex didn't dabble in that many colors at all. So anyone buying this was sort of taking a little bit of a risk. Ultimately, time has shown that risk was worth it. But at the time, it was a green watch.
In fact, I mean, you might say that after perhaps the success of a model like this, and again, when it comes to aluminum bezels, it wasn't the first time that Rolex used such bezels. Of course, the GMT Master line had that for decades, continuing on the initial, of course, the original Bakelite versions. However, like you said, this was very new for the Submariner, which, especially at the time, was really still their proper icon, right? The Daytona craze had just started to really take shape in the early 2000s. And it was, in a way, bold, even though nowadays, we feel green is so proprietary to Rolex that us Rolex fanboys get angered when other brands dare to use any green in their watches.
Well, I certainly do, because I mean, you only discovered that they start producing a green Seamaster after a very eventual success of the Hulk, which actually spent, as we all basically know, it spent most of its life on the shelf. But only once it's successful, the brand's like, oh, we got to do green too. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Cool.
And I think it's appropriate to talk about the Hulk a little bit as well, because that meant practically that they doubled down, that Rolex doubled down when they discontinued the 16610 and ended up eventually releasing the 11610 LV with not only a green ceramic bezel, but in fact a green sunburst dial to go with it. So
It's kind of an odd move because it's not like they had an extra significant thing to celebrate with the Hulk.
no, they were just celebrating themselves.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, we got to do this extra special. It's like, is the anniversary? I don't actually remember whether or not the release of the Hulk also coincided with another anniversary. I don't think it was. It was like it came out what 2011.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, if you with Rolex, there's so many anniversaries in a way
Yeah.
that I'm sure if you twist it, you can come up with something. Because there's the Wilsdorf company has a foundation date, then Rolex name has a
Different. Yeah.
date for its registry. So there's so many, and you can always. It doesn't even have to be a round number, right? It can be like 45th, 55th, 70th, so whatever. But it wasn't necessarily particularly significant the year 2010 for the release of the Hulk, I don't think, unless I'm missing out on anything. I mean, you can say it was 105th anniversary of Rolex. Wow. I mean, that's what a time to be alive. But this particular piece is from around 2005, and it's a beautiful full set, down to the case back sticker that we saw, the tags, and the bezel guard, and everything else that goes with it, the calendar card, and even a later
Later style. Is that for service? Is that a service card?
no, I think that's actually the chronometer.
That's the
What do you
original
call it?
card.
Yeah, attestation. Or
Wow. I didn't realize it was this modern at that time. Huh.
so this is a piece that has an estimated value at lot number 4, 10,000 to 15,400. Of course, the estimates are originally in Hong Kong dollars, which, I mean, very roughly, you can divide it by 8 and get a rough estimate. But as you see, it's more like 7.8, because the Hong Kong dollar estimate is 78,000 to 120. So any number that you see in Hong Kong dollars around this time, I think it's safe to divide it by 7.8 or 8 if you are a little lazier like me, and reach a number. But this seems untouched, new old stock, as Phillips has termed it. That was an example of the Kermit.
This has got to be a lot close to 17, 18, 19 range if it truly is new old stock.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting moment. I've been trying to see how things shape up in terms of comparing these sorts of, let's use the word iconic for the lack of a better term, iconic models that are similar to each other, like the Hulk and the Kermit.
Yeah.
Like when you look at Royal Oak Jumbos, for example, the original 5402 and the most conspicuous 15202, they're interesting trends. I mean, in many ways, the original Jumbo, perhaps at this moment, maybe because people value newer and shinier things, and maybe AP Royal Oak fans, of which I am one, are more vapid than usual, so we go for the newer thing. The market values a lot of the 15202s over the average 5402, which was not really the case before. How do you look at the Kermit Hulk comparison in that case?
Yeah. So the Kermit prices aren't above the Hulk, but they certainly are closer. Objectively, one's neo vintage, the other one is modern. And that's not just labels. Like they are engineered to be very different in terms of like how they're going to look over time, how they wear, how durable they are.
Certainly not in terms of durability of movement. I think
Yeah.
they might even be running same generation movement. Is that possible? 31s? I'm not sure what movements in the Kermit actually at that time frame.
The Kermit should be the 31, 35. Let's click and double check.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, 31.
and this is an early one.
Which I think is what's in the Hulk as well. If that's maybe there's like minor modification in the Hulk. So they're ultimately they have their own upsides, downsides. I
Mhm.
think the main thing is that, and probably what you're seeing on the RO is that a lot of people might see them as close to interchangeable,
Yeah,
like as in like if I'm not going to buy this one, I'll buy this one, and like the pros and cons of each are enough for them to just see them as interchangeable. But on the Kermit side, that thing was probably selling for I think 6,000 MSRP, and
Mhm.
so the reality is that the Kermit has seen as a percentage a much higher gain and return than the Hulk, and I think the Hulk was sold like its lowest MSRP was probably in the $7,000-8,000 range, if
Mhm.
I remember like 2011 sort of prices. But that being said, like as a dark horse, anything bought early on the Hulk probably came at like a 20% discount. So
Yeah, that's
so
possible. I mean,
so
look,
there's
the reaction to the release was lukewarm at best,
soup, yeah.
and much actually, that's a very euphemistic way of looking at it. I mean, people were, I mean, maybe they were as angry as they were to Kubitus. Let's put it like that. Like,
Yeah, it's
because
just
honestly,
stupid. Yeah, yeah.
honestly,
No,
I mean,
it was nasty. I mean, I've looked at old posts with respect to selling at the time,
right.
and they sold under retail, and they correspondingly the secondary market was under that. So we're talking people who bought Hulks for like numbers starting with $5,000 in those early days. It happened.
Oh, by the way, guys, I got the reference. Ryan was talking about the Goldfinger theme that I put behind the posting of this particular watch, which is one of the most insane vintage chronographs I've ever seen. Certainly the most elaborate example of a Jaeger-LeCoultre vintage chronograph that I've seen. It's powered by the Valjoux 72 movement, which was the king, at the time. Obviously, you would find that in Hoya Carreras. You would find that, of course, in the Rolex Daytonas and everything. But this piece has, this bracelet that seems almost integral to the design, both because the kind of, I believe, hammered work that is done on the case as well. But it has this kind of appearance of a camouflage pattern that maybe that's what I want to see. It can be kind of a Rorschach test. But this was a beautiful piece that I saw at the Keystone, which is a watch dealer here in Los Angeles, growing out of the Grunberg watches. This is great piece. The bracelet actually is removable, so you can wear it on a leather strap as well. But why would you want to do that when you could go all out
Yeah.
like that? I mean, it's kind of an exceptional case as well. So it would be hard to see the person who would buy a watch like this to always wear it on the leather strap. I think that wouldn't be right. But yes, guys, if you don't follow me on Instagram, please do that. Feel free to drop a like to this particular post while you're at it. Speaking of gold chronographs and Japanese collecting culture, this is actually what they call a Speedmaster Gold Panda. which was a limited edition for the Japanese market some years back. Apparently one of 40 from around 1997. Pardon me. I think these pieces previously were sold in auction and in a lot of cases fetched respectable numbers. I think the fact that that it was relatively rare still at that time for the Speedmaster to come in precious metal. These days, of course, this is not really the case. The fact that at the end of the day, this is a only 40-piece run, which, by the way, is the real rarity when it comes to Omega, because they usually do 1967, 2,695 pieces when they do limited editions. This is a true limited edition. And of course, it has a Panda dial, which has a lovely backdrop of kind of like a cream shade with a minute seconds track in black, and of course the chronograph registers that are subtly sunken and radially grooved, complemented with a black insert for the tachymeter, which follows the gold accents of the case. You're a big fan of the Speedmaster, Oz, no?
I did my duty of talking someone out of a Speedmaster over lunch today.
Just today.
Yeah.
Some quick God's work over lunch.
Yeah, doing God's work. I said, yeah, no, look, he's like, oh, you're a Rolex fanboy. I'm like, yeah, but I also own a Speedmaster. I just feel like I was bullied into owning one and buying one, and I think most people feel bullied
Most
into
people are.
doing it.
In
Yeah,
the
they're sort of like, you're not really a watch collector unless you've had a Speedmaster or some
right.
such, and oh, the moon, the
Right.
moon, the moon.
I mean, isn't there a live streamer who started making people believe into, his whole shtick when he bought a Speedmaster, right? He became a real watch guy
Right.
until he got a Moritz Grossmann, of course, which makes him an absolute expert in watches.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, there is a sentimentality to it. I still believe that Omega should forward some sort of royalty check to Archie Luxury, of course, because I don't think anyone beat the drum of the Speedmaster for years like Archie did. But apparently, he was joined by at least 40 people in Japan who bought this particular limited edition, which looks very handsome to my eyes, by the way. Chalk flew up. Thank you so much for this generous super chat of $10. Lot 109 seems interesting because it's the Otsuka Lotek number 6 from GPHG last week. It's at auction. We will look at that next quickly. And I think there's actually a legitimate reason it's at auction. Usually, I won't say usually, but sometimes it's part of a publicity stunt, and people usually egg on or jump on the bandwagon because there's already some sort of hype about a watch. So they put something on public auction to see how it will perform, to see if they can ride on that wave, etc. When it comes to Otsuka Lotek, I think eventually they will sell globally in some way or fashion. But I think right now they're out of stock. And whatever they sold in the first run, it could only be delivered in Japan from their Japanese website, right? The two models they have that are both sold out, I think it's number 6, and the other model, which is also a very original design, I think that's number 10. I don't know. I don't remember. We'll take a look in a little bit while we are examining lot 108. But they're both sold out. And when they were selling on the website, they were only shipped to Japanese addresses. So technically was a Japanese market watch, didn't really have any sort of global, sales just yet or release just yet. So to find it in an auction is not outrageous. And when you find them on the secondary market, it's even before the GPHG, it was actually, I think, about 2 times the release price.
Yeah, I think like 2000 something was
Mhm.
what you could expect to pay on eBay.
Mm.
And I think it was a lottery, if I'm not mistaken,
Or
to get.
maybe that too. Yeah. So the initial release was also a lottery and only sending to Japanese addresses, I think.
Mm.
But I mean, so it's understandable that, at least for now, it's much less egregious than a Moonwatch turning up in auction, which has happened. Moon Swatch, I should say. MCM, good evening to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know. I find this piece very attractive. There's also kind of, because it's gold from late 90s, there's some sort of warm patina developing.
The thing that strikes me is like there's almost no difference between this case design and I think mine, the modern Moonwatch,
Mm-hmm.
as best as I can tell. Like it's just exactly the same case and buttons and crown and not quite. I mean, the tolerances around that crown guard seems a little bit.
Different because of the
Yeah,
different metal, I think.
there's a little bit of daylight there that don't think I see on the 3861. Oh, there we go. What the hell happened there? Hold on. Well, I'm about to get raided. That's what's happened.
This is lot 13 for a reference 3690 3001, a limited edition yellow gold Speedmaster, the golden panda, so to speak, one of 40, made for the Japanese market. And the pre-auction estimate, the estimated value of the watch, is set in the range between 19,200 to 38,500. But let's take a look at Chalk Flew Up's request to the Otsuka Lotek, which we find in 108, I think, or 107 and 108. I think 107
I've never
is that,
seen the black one.
that's a one of a kind version, I think.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at both. Model number 6 was the winner in the challenge category of the GPHG. It basically features double retrograde hands for hours and minutes with a date indicator right below those two fan-like scales. And I think another attractive point of this watch, beyond the case design and the offset crown, is also the typography that it features on the dial, the Japanese typography specifically. And beyond that, again, there's the issue of rarity, which I'm pretty sure, they didn't. I'm pretty sure they didn't send a watch to the GPHG just for kicks, right? Just for shits and giggles, so to speak. I'm sure there's going to be a follow-up release where they
Wide production.
where they at least have another run, another raffle, anything really. But this is the website currently where they have apparently the other one, number 7.5, which I like even better, I have to say, and the number 6, both of which were apparently raffled out and are currently out of stock. initially the Model 6 was sold for less than $3,000. I think more around 2,800. I think Oz, you had said they trend around 2,000, but whatever I see are more closer to $4,000 or $5,000 on the secondary
Really?
market.
Wow. Okay. I'm not sure if that's gone up or my memory is faulty, but I have seen these two pieces in person.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
where'd you see them?
There's a collector here in Las Vegas. They
Okay.
brought them to a watch meet.
Ah,
And the pictures do them justice.
yeah.
It's a very retro looking thing. It looks handmade, as in it's a little imprecise, it's not cheap or anything like that. Just it looks handmade, looks ornate. Um,
I mean
it's a very interesting piece overall, very interesting
that's
piece.
quite impressive for the so-called challenge category, right? Specifically for a watch that costs, in fact, at least at retail, less than $3,000.
Mm. It's good value considering how unique it is and how literally rare it is, and um, it's a very interesting piece. And within the watch world, you could easily be saying, "Oh, this was $20,000." You could easily that could happen. You know what I mean? It's not a mass production piece. It's not hot garbage. You know,
Right.
so
Bigger scams have been certainly made for watches that are much less original, but
yeah,
sold for much more expensive. Again, it has especially if you're into the kind of industrial aesthetic, um, it's hard not to be captivated by this or the Model 7.5, which to me kind of looks like a poor man's Antigua, so to speak, which is of course a perpetual calendar, which is of course a high horology watch, which has a different level of finishing, obviously, but that's kind of steampunk, Jules Verne kind of element is there in both watches, perhaps more so in the 7.5.
hmm
This is also a full set, in this case, like new. How does it wear since it's almost 43 millimeters? Did you try?
yeah. I didn't put it on. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if these are designed to be worn. uh, you
That's an
know,
interesting take. Okay.
they're very interesting pieces. Like I don't think this is a piece that someone would daily or something like that. And like, and even if you're talking like special occasion, this isn't a special occasion watch either. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It's not a quote unquote high class piece or something like that. It's not precious metal, so it's hard to say exactly what this is because it's not a sports watch and it's not, like a dress watch or something like that. It's not
Sure.
precious metal. So it's threading the needle on uniqueness to the extent that, there's maybe no setting in which you would really wear this watch.
I mean, I can, yeah, I can. It's really a watch guy's watch more than
Yeah.
anything, and it is hard to. I don't know what kind of occasion, but certainly it's hard to imagine a person who has this as their only watch. That's
Yeah.
one situation I can't really see. This is lot 108 for the Otsuka Lotek number 6, in like new condition with a pre-auction estimate that's set in the range between 1,900 to 5,800 US dollars, and there is a one of a kind version of this watch.
Yeah. I mean, is this authentic? I mean, is
Yeah, made
there any
for
evidence they made this?
made for the occasion, so it has to be
Ah,
in this
okay.
case.
Interesting.
Yeah, it would be great if someone just chopped it. Here I DLC blackened this. Please
Yeah.
take it on auction. Um,
So
so
it's had some sort of coating applied because you can still see the finishing of the metal, and then the dial is like sort of like this translucent plastic, I'm guessing. I don't know.
yeah, I think that's even a more interesting element, because at the end of the day, blackened steel or blackened titanium pieces are not, we are not alien to those anymore. They are dime a dozen, but um, the dial is, I think, the more interesting thing. I'm trying to see if there's any notes on the dial specifically for us to see what kind of material it is. It doesn't say. Maybe it's some sort of black and sapphire, maybe, I want to say.
So it seems like it might be a bit of a stretch, but you never know. I
Oh,
mean,
it
there's a
does.
lot of machining that has to be done here, and
It's a
like that just seems
smoked sapphire crystal glass for the
wow.
dial. Okay.
Okay, they really put a lot of effort on this one. We got a super chat.
Super chat. It does have the same estimated value, by the way, but of course, this being a pièce unique, so to speak, would probably go higher from 108, and this is lot 107 for the one-of-a-kind Otsukalotech number 6, kind of the murdered out edition, specifically made, expressly made for this auction. Let's take a look at the super chat. I think we are 2 chats away now from our goal, so hopefully we'll make it. There's still more than 15 minutes to squeeze in 2 more super chats, not super stickers, not anything else in the time that remains. Sorry, I was trying to catch that fly. Thank you, Sean. Let's take a look at this super chat. Cheers, gents. Great to see Oz as well. It's been a couple of years since our meetup in Las Vegas. Hope all is well. Young Brando, I really like this piece. Based on what I saw on video, the finish seemed to be well done. That's also what Ozzy testifies to here, I think, right? When it comes to Otsukalotech.
Yes, yeah. There's nothing sort of undercooked or anything like that. The pictures are pretty faithful. These are very unique pieces, and yeah, I owe you a drink still. Thank you so much. You're super cool, dude. There was a situation there where everyone had ordered drinks, and the waitress was like, and you just threw your card in. I think your energy levels are very commendable. A lot of fun. I hope we can do something at some point. We'll see.
Well, I mean, if you make it to Los Angeles, maybe we can do a mini meetup here, since Sean is here as well. By the way, there's another Otsukalotech in 109, the jump hour piece that I like even better. Yeah, this feels even more outrageous and maybe more daring as a design.
Mhm.
But there's still a family resemblance, I guess, beyond just the case design and probably the movement base, which I'm given to understand is the same Miyota movement, modified differently. But by and large, I guess I like jump hours anyways. So this is easier for me. I mean, the other one, yes, I love a retrograde complication too. But like you said, it's maybe a little. I mean, whether it's imprecise or not, having not seen or worn the watch, I can't really speak to that. But it is much harder to read than than this
Mhm.
one, most certainly.
Well, this one has the unique property of like having optics over the top of things you're meant to read. So you kind of need to be lined up right on top of it to be able to look down into the little portholes. It's a very fun piece. Between the two, I honestly can't express a preference. You gotta get
You don't
both.
you
I
don't have
think.
to be you don't have to be that diplomatic.
No, no, no. Like the person I saw, who had these pieces, he had both, and I'm like, I would go for both. If you, I mean, what's the difference? 5,000, 10,000, just get both.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, once it's released, and if you actually like the aesthetic, um, I think this is an interesting up and coming independent brand to patronize, so to speak. My friend Gary Getz has that category of watch collecting that he uh, you know somewhat, I think, ostentatiously calls patronage, but it's usually in relation to brands that are just coming up and that perhaps have interesting design elements. Perhaps they're doing something a little more daring, a little more challenging from either a horological or aesthetic perspective. And because they're newcomers, sometimes they're offered at a much lower price point.
Mm.
I'm not gonna indulge in prophecy here, but I do remember the days of Konstantin Chaikin's Joker watches, where they were sold for a fraction of what they do now, and it was just something that was seemingly throwaway, that he designed very quickly because the actual watch that he wanted to introduce in Basel World just didn't function properly or the way he wanted. So he had to find something else and devise something else very quickly. And now they're a classic. Now they're an entire series that has spawned so many different versions. Now I don't know if that will happen to Otsuka Lotek or not. Pardon me, but in either case, this seems to be a very low risk situation for someone who actually, pardon me, likes the brand, likes to take, likes the uh, challenge of taking a chance on a brand that's a relatively unknown quantity, but on the verge of everyone discovering it, especially in the wake of this GPHG award. And yeah, for most high rolling collectors, this is fun money. It's
Yeah.
not much to play with, which is, again, I don't know if this kind of auction is the right occasion to make such a purchase. I would try to wait for the next run or next raffle. Hopefully, that will be open to a global audience that will have actually watches they will ship outside of Japan as well. But even in that case, I would rather get in touch with a Japanese collector or friend in Japan, to whom you can get the watch shipped perhaps, and try to acquire the watch that way. But this is, I think, a very interesting brand that you might want to take a chance on.
I think what's really interesting about this brand, these two pieces, is that they both serve a particular purpose in terms of having this sort of retro electromechanical sort of aesthetic that is both unique and fun and interesting, but they're actually not derivative of each other. Like they're immediately like you should just get both. Like they're
Right.
both super cool. Then it's not redundant. It's not like there's a black one and a blue one or something. So
Right.
yeah, they've
But
done a
nevertheless,
great.
like you said, like, they share an aesthetic, right? It's not just the case design either. But they're not just slight variations of each other. They're quite quite different.
Yeah, they both achieved this sort of ultimate goal of being unique, but clearly being the same brand, with just these two pieces. That it's kind of amazing.
Shit, did I catch it? I don't know. That's gonna occupy me for the rest of the night, I'm afraid. So please do add these 2 more super chats, so I stay live with you rather than hunting down this fly that got in because I made the mistake of leaving the window open. Von Krul with a picture of Hugh Laurie or even Dr. House, I think. Says, my favorite jumping hours watch so far is Van Cleef and Arpels, Heure d'ici, Heure d'ailleurs. That's amazing, actually. It's like, are you familiar with this one, Ozzy?
No.
This is also, incidentally, a watch that a friend has, and a friend I finally met in person, Dr. Sanders, who is the face of Watch Art Sci channel. We have collaborated in the past. So this is a jumping hour watch with a retrograde minute hand. But as you can see, it has 2 porthole style windows for 2 digital numerals. And those are for 2 different time zones, basically. So it's a jump hour / GMT or reference time or dual time watch. And that's basically the French name of the piece. Heure d'ici meaning the time here, heure d'ailleurs, time elsewhere. So
When was this piece made?
This, I think it was introduced somewhere in 2010s, sometime in 2010s. Let me try to hunt that. But it does have that aesthetic that is a throwback for sure because of the case design at the very least.
Well, I mean, I've seen Van Cleef and Arpels watches in their store, and they all strike me as being very colorful and artistic. And this is artistic, but is certainly not colorful. So it's interesting.
I think
Very interesting piece for sure.
Since it was designed as a men's watch, which is, I'm not going to say a rarity, but they make much less men's pieces than women's when it comes to watches. I think it's a much more muted piece compared to their usual offering. This was apparently something released in 2015.
Oh no, I stand corrected. Like, no, there is a modern corollary for this piece. I mean, it's just a simpler hour and minute watch, but actually they still do maintain this sort of design with the center motif and okay, yeah, including case design. There is a modern corollary for this, the Pierre Arpels.
Yeah, I think that's basically the bigger line. And if I'm not mistaken, the movement for this, which is quite unique, was made by Jean-Marc Wiederrecht, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting. So there is so I mean, this could be modern production actually. So there is one on their current website.
Oh, they still have this in their
lineup? Yeah. And my gosh, the case back is phenomenal. The view of the movement from the case back is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very unique movement. Let me see if I can also reach.
I provided the link.
Oh, you did?
Private chat, yeah.
Okay, let's do that very quickly. Yeah, and the movement was designed by Jean-Marc Wiederrecht of Agenor.
I'm normally not one to look at, exhibition case back and really
Yes.
critique or praise or dismiss, but this one really looks very, very interesting. Like the finishing is all on different radiuses, and the wheels look very interesting, and they've got certain wheels that are at different angles. Yeah, it's very, very interesting piece.
Honestly, I think it always pays off when something is made bespoke in a way for a brand. We obsess sometimes over in-house this, in-house that, but this is clearly something they commissioned to Agenor, which is a movement maker and complications designer specifically. And the movement that Wiederrecht designed, both in terms of its functionality and architecture, is quite unique. It's hard not to like it, and it does
Is
look
that is
beautiful.
that is this an automatic? Is that a rotor
Yeah,
blue lattice thing? And so
that's a
they've
mathematical.
done the reverse, where normally the rotor is visible and not underneath anything. This one, it's closer to the dial than it is to the case back. It's interesting.
And it kind of replicates the same sort of design, which apparently was supposed to look like a fancy man's shirt, like a dress shirt pattern, which very French pattern. I have to say, I've never worn a shirt like that. Maybe when you zoom very closely to an Oxford cloth shirt, you would get something like that. But it looks more like a fish scale pattern to me than anything. But cool nonetheless. You likened it to lattice work. But yeah, this is beautiful. And I think it's like $27,000 plus tax in the US. It lists here as 29,000 euros, including the taxes. And it's not the kind of watch that you can find every day on the secondary market. Sometimes months go by before one pops up, but when they do, they are usually considerably cheaper than the retail price, just to keep in mind if you are a collector like me who likes snapping up things when they go on the secondary market. Let's take a look at this beautiful Langenheine piece. Langenheine was a brand initially founded by Mirko Heine and Marco Lang in Dresden, which obviously represents, as Glashütte does, and as Glashütte more famously does, perhaps, in the contemporary time, the Saxonian tradition of watchmaking. They make an extremely limited number of watches per year. Speaking of movement design, one of the best things about Langenheine watches are the series of calibers that Marco Lang mostly designed and left to the brand. Even after he has left the brand for a long time, it's still, for the most part, movements that he has designed initially and left with them. And that really shows. And everything else, when you commission a new watch with them, is up for your personalization. It's available for you to customize in some shape and form, and that's really enabled by the fact that they are a true vertically integrated manufacturer that makes most things, if not everything, by themselves, by whatever they have in-house or as an immediate supplier. The design overall is very Teutonic. so to speak. Something that you can, I'm sure, see in the austere design of the dial, as well as the distinct angular three-pronged lug designs of the case as well. There's, I think,
NATO's also pointing out that three lug design. Ironically, you can't put a NATO strap through this.
right. Yeah. Right. Nice connection there. Yeah. Yes, that would need a custom NATO strap. But I think the reason it doesn't look too obnoxious, maybe, and not my word choice, but I think I understand exactly what he means, is because I think the middle prong is kind of abbreviated as well, so it's not very intrusive at all.
That doesn't even look like it would even connect potentially with the spring bar. It looks offset, which is fine. I mean, I do like that it sort of occupies the space. Like, I have trouble looking at straps sometimes that there's a gap between that middle space, and I don't know. This is nice. That's nice.
And obviously the movement is really something to behold. The snailing that is done on the wheels, beautiful frosting of the bridges, the angles, and of course the famous balance cock that is hand engraved, and the swan neck regulator, which we are of course very used to seeing in this region's watchmaking, and which we usually praise so lavishly when we see it in a Lange watch. So it's fair that we do the same with Lang und Heine as well. Those oversized heat blued screws, as well as the jewels that sit in nicely polished countersinks. Those are all elements that we see in high watchmaking from the German region of Saxony. I believe this is a stainless steel case, kind of like this onion style crown as well, which gives...
How much do you think those jewels cost?
The jewels themselves, the rubies.
Yeah.
I don't think the synthetic rubies in and of themselves cost much of anything, but
yeah,
I believe the balance bridge actually has a single brilliant cut diamond.
Wow.
So an actual jewel in this particular case, which
Well, not anymore though, but anyway.
What do you mean?
I was just the prices of lab diamonds now is just unbelievable. Well, I mean, I was just noting that ultimately the value here is really the workmanship and design. It's exquisite. That a lot of movements they sort of like, oh, 21 jewels and stuff like that. Or it's like, okay, jewel count is what you want. It's like, well, the actual jewels are not worth much. And even in this case now, like, yeah, it's a real diamond. I don't care, but the diamonds aren't really, worth much anymore either.
Yeah, of course.
But the whole workmanship and the integration of these design elements is exquisite.
I think
that holds over time. That's not transcended at all.
Absolutely. And also, the function of the jewels are, to explain it very quickly without nerding out completely, the jewels are so integral to watch movements because they are, in a way, leftovers of a time where those friction points, pivoting on jewels, saved on having to renew the lubrication of those movements so frequently. But modern movement technologies don't necessarily require so many components, so many jewels. to avoid that kind of friction. So at the end of the day, they do remain, I think they still serve a functional purpose, don't take me wrong, but for the most part, I think jewels remain as part of movements really as more so decorative elements than anything. And that's why they have to be distinguished in this sort of high horological world. In, they are set in mirror polished countersinks, in a gold chaton, and what I mean, it has to be even, more finely presented, because at the end of the day, I think you can make a movement that consists of the least amount of components and least amount jewels, and have perhaps similar levels of efficiency, but fine watchmaking overcomplicates things generally and creates problems than it then solves to show off a certain kind of skill. So you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, it is about workmanship, the artisanal craft of decoration, and the handwork that goes into it, rather than any particular material that is used. By the way, guys, I see we have about 23 people watching the stream. So if you haven't yet upvoted, please hit the like button. We have another super chat. Thank you so much for C3D Now, and another one. Wow. Even though another one, even though,
oh my gosh,
even though they didn't quite hit at the time of the goal, it has taken us beyond that. So I really appreciate all of this, and we will continue. GD, thank you so much for the super chat as well. I think those are Argentine pesos for the super sticker, hundreds. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This is a Lang und Heine Friedrich III. I don't know. I kind of, even though it is very austere in a way and very much a dress watch, I don't know if it's the stainless steel case. I don't know if it's the black dial or those subtle kind of fish mouth style, I guess, crown guards, or maybe the oversized crown itself. I get a slight sporty feel in this watch. Of course, I think it's still a very, kind of stately looking piece, hence the royal name that goes with it, I suppose. But I kind of like their style. Not enough to snag one just yet, but I loved it. I spent quite a bit of time at their booth at Watch Time, listening to their demonstration, both in German and English. But then again, I think I could have listened to that woman read the phone book and still had a lot of fun. So not sure if it was about the watches or the female brand representative they had. I tried to keep it civil and professional. So this is lot 103, estimated value of 15,400 to 25,600. By the way, again, at retail with comparable levels of handwork and originality and decoration, Lang & Heine offers a very interesting proposition, especially if you like tinkering with elements of the watch you order, customize certain things. It's a very interesting proposition they have in either case. I think this was a piece that was bought in Japan, that would be the connection to the Japanese market for this Friedrich III Lot 103 Lang & Heine stainless steel dress watch. Were there any, I'm sure you took a look at some of the watches by now, Oz. Were there any ones that you want to take a look at?
Not particularly. I was just gonna go with the flow.
Okay. Sean, I'm not a fan of the handsets generally with Lang & Heine. It strikes me as always too ornate. I mean, it's not as bad as, you know, another brand that I love, but the Fleur de Lis hands that Chapek has, I'm not a fan at all. But the standards, the default Lang & Heine handsets, I don't know, it kind of, you know, with their Roman numeral dials and everything, and for their aesthetic, it seems to fit. But I have to say, it is one of those elements that has kept me away from their watches, to be honest. I find it too ornate, you know, not to the level, again, of those Fleur de Lis or Louis XIV hands that you can sometimes see in pocket watches and pocket watch inspired wristwatches as well. But I still find it a little too much. Let's see. I was thinking, I think there was a 3970 here, that first series, which looked pretty interesting. The 3970 for Patek is an absolute classic, perpetual calendar chronograph, built on the base of the Lemania CH27, the classic 36 millimeter case size. The case design overall, also with the with those stepped lugs, the fluted lugs, as they're sometimes called, is very elegant in a classical way. The yellow gold seems to have taken on something of a subtle patina over time, nothing excessive, which probably just adds warmth. The subdials are subtly sunken, so they bring a depth into the dial without really disrupting its overall harmony. You know, there's not much of anything I want to add to it, except the first series of the 3970 must be overall about 100 examples, perhaps. So it's a rare enough breed. Overall, the 3970 in the world of complicated Patek might offer some value. The first series, it being perhaps more rare, might, of course, carry a certain kind of premium. In this case, as much as I examined the example before, I think it's box and papers as well as an archival extract. So that's probably some added value as well. But the condition is really key, and it seems quite well preserved as well.
Okay, I got one. I got one to look at.
So
see,
drop it into private chat, and we'll look at that next.
Yeah.
This is lot 87 for the Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar Chronograph, belonging to the first series, so about the first 2 years of production, between 1986 to 88. snapback case, leaf-styled hands, rectangular indices, kind of like the stick markers for the hours. Only made in yellow gold, about 100 examples. I'm guessing again that this is a watch initially delivered to Japan, and that somehow establishes the connection, or perhaps it is consigned by a Japanese collector. I don't really get the connection here, but it's a stunning watch nonetheless. That was lot 87 for a Patek Philippe First Series 3970 perpetual calendar chronograph with a pre-auction estimate set in the range between 128,000 to 256,000 US dollars. Oh yeah, we are looking at a clock here, number 23. This comes at Aussie Expats suggestion. A watch made by Lepe.
Yeah, well, I couldn't find on the listing an attribution to Lepe, and it confuses me a lot.
Well, I think this collaboration was one of those moments when they perhaps decided to acquire Lepe, because you might know that it is now part of the LVMH group,
Oh, okay.
and they
I
did make this
no.
collaboration with Tiffany and Co. I didn't realize there was also a limited edition for the Japanese market. I really thought that they did make one of these at least for the New York flagship as well. But anyways, apparently this particular one is from 50 pieces made exclusively for the Japanese market.
I think there's a lot of Lepes. I'm not pronouncing it right, but I think there's a lot that are quote unquote special because at the moment in Las Vegas, the Bucharest store has one in a sort of a is it a carbon fiber? It's definitely some type of carbon of this model, and it's not on their website either, and it's obviously like quote unquote special. The one thing I do notice on these clocks is they're quite loud. Um, like they'll be in the exhibition cabinet, and I
Yeah.
can hear them clicking. And this is a silent environment, the store. It
Do
doesn't
you
inspire me
like
as
that?
much as like
No, you don't like.
no, it doesn't inspire me as much as the JLC clock. I forgot what that was called, the one that has
Atmos.
this powered, yeah, the Atmos, yeah.
Yeah.
It strikes me as being very, I mean, we're talking about it's a clock, so it's like bigger pieces and so forth. It doesn't strike me as being potentially far removed from
For me,
anyone's capability to do.
right, certainly Atmos is, both also because of its particularly ingenious way of winding itself according to, or rather with the help of changes in environmental temperature. That's like a very unique horological creation, right? That's a genre onto itself, right? It's not just another mechanical clock made for, made by an otherwise illustrious watch brand.
Right.
With Lepe, I think what excites me usually is the design itself, rather than the horology involved necessarily. And perhaps like a clever, if you want to say it condescendingly, you can say cute way of integrating something about that object into the functionality as well. For example, whenever it is these kinds of cars, they're like those, I think in English you call them Hot Wheels, right? You know, the cars that you kind of drag back and then they kind of on their own run forward, you know, burst forward. So I'm sure this is one like that too. But whenever it's a race car design, you can literally wind them by dragging them back that way. Right. And again, you know, you can say that's too cute and who cares about that. For me, it's kind of clever.
And nice. It is. The thing that weirds me out a little bit though is that I'll pay attention to two particular ones. So one, the car, two, maybe the grenade, and three.
The grenade is my absolute favorite for sure.
Right. And there's a new one now at the Bucharest store, and it's like a lever action rifle. What's weird to me is that all the things that they are, the grenade, the car, the rifle, none of them are really even close to the real thing. Now, I'm not saying this needs to be a real car. I'm just saying like it's sort of it's got a design of a car that sort of emulates sort of like 1960s era Formula One cars, but it's kind of nowhere even close. And I'm not like that kind of irks me a little bit. Like if I've got a clock that's a car, I'd like it to be like a Brabham or something like that, like an actual, like it's just a model, right? It's just a shape. Like I'd want it to actually be inspired of something in particular, and instead it's sort of like it's roughly of such a shape. I'm not exactly sure what to say about that. And same with the rifle, that the rifle has sights that would never work. Like anyone who looked at the sights would just say like that's not a sensible sighting system. Like it wouldn't.
I think you
couldn't take aim with it.
You might be happy that LVMH acquired them then.
Right.
Not that they would make necessarily more functional objects, but the avenues of collaboration
might expand,
not only within the Louis Vuitton group, but also with the kind of leverage they have may open the way for perhaps like they would collaborate with one of the F1 brands, who knows, to create, or maybe they will do one of each, or 10 of each with all the brands, since it's not only Tag Heuer, unlike Rolex, but LVMH as a whole that is taking over Formula One's hospitality and sponsorship next year. So they will supply anything from timekeepers to trophy cabinets to, really the sky is the limit with the kind of brands they have within their body. But I think maybe that could be an interesting one, right? If we had like an actual, not actual, but like a model of a Scuderia Ferrari, L'Epée clock that looks pretty much like the F1 car they will drive, let's say from 2026 onwards, but is also kind of a winding table clock like this one. This one, of course, has, it's in Tiffany blue, has number 5 for the Fifth Avenue, where their flagship store is, the Tiffany logo on the grill, and also set diamonds around the bezel that demarcate the hours and minutes. And Sean says very toy-like, and I think that can be both criticism and praise, depending on where you look at it, because at the end of the day, I think unlike, except for some of those unique creations like the grenade, like the rifle you were talking about, most of them I think look more like toys. Those perhaps more towards a piece of mechanical art, even though Oz says that they leave something to be desired for the most part.
Yeah, I think that there's something off about them. I think it's just they don't exude the precision or workmanship that I think we expect, especially around the price tag. It doesn't strike me as being beyond the capability of any company to do. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like they have something particularly inspired or particularly highly skilled in putting this together. Is what Sean was saying. It's kind of cheap looking, and I agree. It kind of is cheap looking. Like when you have like horological components that are quite loud and quite large. I don't know what to say. It doesn't that there doesn't really feel like there's much there ultimately. Like
Yeah.
very easily confused with something that you could buy from Amazon or something. They're very cool. Like they're very cool. Like it's not, they're not lacking in
I think that's
cool factor.
that's a legitimate criticism, and of course, the fact that again, it's not overly complicated in any way. Don't take me wrong, but it has a full 8-day power reserve, so it's it's a little bit more horological than other kinds of toys that you might find even on Alibaba and Amazon. But for sure, yeah, I understand. When you correlate that to the price tag, I mean, here the estimated value is 25,600 to 51,300. At retail, it's not like even the more regular pieces, it's not like they cost a few $1,000s. It's usually more in line of 10,000 plus. So it's you really have to love one of those pieces to less necessarily go for go for a Lepe piece. This is the Tiffany and Co. at lot 23.
Yeah, like $30,000 for just a base model, not the Tiffany model, unadorned. It's what strikes me as a dad of young kids is like having things that look like a grenade or a rifle or a toy car, just leaving that around and not expecting that to get played with is just, even an adult, you can't trust an adult not to pick it up. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
No, for sure. Now that you put it that way, yeah. I would honestly, I mean, especially if I hadn't seen or heard of the brand, if it were completely novel thing to me, I would most certainly try to grab it.
Yes.
At a friend's place, not necessarily in the store immediately.
Yeah.
Most of you guys probably know that I really like this particular generation or iteration of the Vacheron Constantin overseas chronograph. The reference number is 49150. This is a limited edition of the stainless steel version, made in a run of 50 pieces for the Japanese market. There are a few things that I really like about this particular design. I'm a big fan of the big date indicator. You guys know I'm usually not a fan of dates, but when they take center stage like that, very much in the vein of the Reverso Grande that I'm wearing now, I can kind of stomach them. I'm not enamored by the choice of fonts that are necessarily used in this dial. But beyond that, I really like this asymmetric layout, you might say, of the chronograph registers, where you have the running seconds as the smallest and most finely calibrated, and then you have the 12-hour counter that's a little bigger at 9 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock you have a big eye for the 30-minute totalizer. This particular piece has a dial that has very interesting detail at the center. Kind of looks like Grenet, but obviously it's probably a stamped version of that. Kind of a grained texture at the center.
How do you think the hour hand ticks over? Because they've got graduations for like 1, 2, 3, 4, four graduations between each hour.
I think it sweeps probably. The
Just
minute
sweeps.
one probably, the minutes probably ticks or jumps, and the hour sweeps, as far as I know. I don't think it's every 15 minutes that it
Yeah.
ticks over. So, yeah, probably not. I'm speaking off the top of my mind in this case, but again, I'm not really enamored by the fonts, but I like the dial on this one otherwise. The tachymeter is very nicely situated on the periphery of the dial. It's marked limited edition on the back. I'm not sure if it's numbered otherwise, even though it's one of 50. And certainly that is a detail you would have noted on the cards. And once again, it comes practically as a full set. I believe the dial is like navy blue with lighter blue details, which I think are very pleasant. Again, I'm not in love with the font, but otherwise, this is a very nice and unique version of the second generation.
Go back to the picture with the side profile, but the dial facing up. Yeah, that one. It's interesting here as I'm seeing screws right up until the end link.
Mm-hmm.
So on that side is going like implying you could adjust all the way down to like nothing.
This one also, unlike the third generation, which is much more modular and was one of the models that pioneered this kind of quick exchange strap with the integrated bracelet pieces. This second gen, of course, actually requires tools to take the strap out and switch it out. This can still be retrofitted with leather straps and rubber straps and whatever else, like the newest generation of overseas. But the screws that you are seeing on the end links are there to remove the bracelet entirely, rather than removing the link itself.
Right. Well, but I mean, even the link right after it's got a screw head as well.
This one, you mean?
Yeah, and I'm normally used to seeing like on the Rolex, like the first three are non-optional, and then it's not repeated on the 6 o'clock side.
Nope.
Interesting. Oh no, it is. It's just on the other way around.
Yeah.
So it's all optional. So you could size this down to a lady's wrist.
Or mine, for that matter. Forbin Colossus earlier was saying toys for adult men, a topic. I mean, maybe, yeah, don't go too deep, Forbin. If you were implying that the existence of Lepé and their toy-like mechanical clocks kind of exposes the deep underbelly or subconscious of our watch collecting hobby, we can't go into such dark places. We all know that we are, at the end of the day, all kids who like nice toys. I think that's what most adult men are like, and the toys that we like are mechanical watches that we can wear on our wrist. But this happens to be lot 18 from the Toki watch auction, Phillips Hong Kong, particularly centering on the Japanese culture of watch collecting. This is the second generation overseas chronograph by Vacheron Constantin, reference 49150, limited edition stainless steel, one of 50 for the Japanese market, with a pre-auction estimate between 23,100 to 35,900 American dollars. Again,
talking about
yeah,
go ahead. Talking about kids and grown men, I actually broke my rule of not buying shitters, and I decided to pick up this piece in private chat. But one thing we got to stop doing, yeah. But one thing we got to stop doing is settling for Snoopy as the character on our watches when we want them to be slightly more fun. We need like modern mascots, please. Can we get a SpongeBob version of this?
I feel like I feel like you got this just to troll the Omega owners more than anything. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. But also, it's a very nice watch. Like ultimately, it's very nice. I like the lack of the lugs. It's got a panda dial. It's got Snoopy there. I like that it's on a strap. It's just slightly different. And then it's got a quartz movement, so it's sort of for a cheap watch. I kind of prefer quartz on a cheap watch just because I don't have to worry about it breaking as easily as a mechanical watch or not being as accurate. I don't have any of those concerns.
It's like the Moon Swatch, but better. No.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot cheaper too. It's a lot cheaper than the Moonswatch. It's got a metal case.
Wow, a metal case.
Yeah, it's actually, it's not made out of biodegradable.
The original biomaterial, you might say. Like, it's in a way, perhaps it's more sustainable than plastic.
Right. Yeah. Could well be the
case. More bio, possibly.
Yeah, and just overall, like I think aesthetically, like it's interesting, fun, and not that much money. Like they've got a 15% off deal. They emailed me a 20% off deal, so that's like 160 or something like that. I'm not that enticed anymore about watches that are simply cheap, but I think this one is actually, it's fun. That's for sure.
I love the fact, by the way, that I had just pulled Sean's super chat from earlier. The finishing is impeccable, which I think was a comment on the Vacheron, but that we had it juxtaposed with the Snoopy Timex. I think was just a blessing, so to speak.
Yeah. It's yeah. Oh yeah, it's Sean, you're quite right. The chrono pushers are bigger than the crown.
Yeah, it's appalling, except it's literally for peanuts. So I will hold back my criticism as well. But yeah, for the category, it seems interesting. I don't really like fun stuff on my on my wrist, honestly. If
Right.
there's anything fun, I think for me it verges towards or leans towards the Otsukalote territory that we were looking at. It has to
Right.
be something, seemingly otherworldly, science fictional, or kind of steampunk / industrial aesthetic for me to make it fun. This kind of fun, I don't know. I would probably wear Snoopy themed or Peanuts themed Crocs before I wear a watch like this. I think this would be my way of putting it. Do they have Snoopy Crocs?
They probably do. They've done a collab with just about everyone at this point. But so what I like about this is that I think just overall it just looks nice to me. I don't have a Timex. I've been wanting to get a Timex for a very long time after seeing my arch enemy get it, wear his Timex very often, Mark Wahlberg. And I feel that this is a good one up on his I don't know whatever they call it, Timex Iron Man or whatever
So,
garbage that he's got.
Oz, what watch wouldn't you buy if they put a Panda dial on it? Like what would be one watch that you can't even stomach, even with a Panda dial? I think it's just because you like Panda dials, because of your Daytona, that you are kind of
Enamored a bit,
being
yeah.
attracted to this. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly like the white and black aesthetic. I think it's something that's resonating with me a bit more and more. Yeah, look, we'll see. We'll see. I do like that it's quartz. For me, like if it's a shitter, it has to be quartz because otherwise, and battery powered, not some sort of solar stuff because I don't like the quartz has to be like grab it and go. Because if I think too much about it, then I'm gonna like put on a Rolex or something like that. Like
And
if
honestly,
I'm
I
thinking
think,
too much.
it also reminds me of a very wise comment that you have made in the past. And I think that's generally a concern about cheaper watches, especially if you don't have a watchmaker at hand who provides services, fairly expeditiously and for reasonable prices. They can become throwaway very quickly. Even
Yeah,
cheap mechanical watches, like when you buy something for 100, 200, 350, $400, and when it stops working, and you take it to service and someone wants to stiff you for a couple of $100, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and chances are that you would rather not get it fixed than throw away and buy a new one.
yeah,
Whereas with a quartz watch, before you run through a mechanism, before you quote unquote burn the entire movements, chances are you can go through a few battery changes, and it will take you at least through a decade or a decade and a half, possibly longer. So you're right. Maybe for a certain price segment, quartz might even make more sense for the average person than a cheap
the cheap
mechanical watch.
mechanical. Yeah.
I don't belong to that group, honestly, because I
Mhm.
I have watchmakers at hand who can do these things and turn them over pretty quickly, especially when it comes to something not complicated at all and not necessarily a high market brand.
Yeah.
But I think you point to something quite interesting and important there.
Yeah. The watch that I sort of now sort of half worry about is my Seiko Alpinist, which nobody loves, but but when I bought that it was it was a little pricier, I think like for 300 400 or something.
Yeah.
But now they keep hovering around this $1,000 mark. I I'm obligated to make sure that that gets fixed if it ever is not performing that well, and I think it isn't actually performing that well. Its power reserve or efficiency doesn't seem to be quite up to snuff, but I shudder the thought, because I mean it's I don't know anyone to be able to take a look at it. I would half guess that would be just easier to swap the movement completely.
Guys, hit the like button. Welcome back, JB. Nice to see you. Sean, fair to say you are not a Psycho Bunny fan. I don't even know exactly what that is, but if it is a certain kind of woman who also happens to be psycho, I love him. I can't help myself. I know it's some sort of brand. I'm pretty sure I'm not a fan. I don't really know what they are either. This is quite cool. Number 29. The Opus series were initiated by the current sweethearts for all indie makers, Max Büsser, when he was responsible for watches at Harry Winston. The Opus 1 involved a collaboration between the brand and François-Paul Jean, and this is a one-of-a-kind piece for Opus 1 in platinum that basically uses the unique case with that lock design that harkens back to the pillars of the Harry Winston flagship boutique in New York. This is a self-winding FP Jean piece, power reserve, offset dial with an overlapping small seconds and a big date indicator, réserve de marche, so to speak, which was, at least at the time, with his 5-hour power reserve, kind of the highest achievement for an automatic movement. Obviously, this would be also an example of a rhodium-plated brass movement for an FP Jean, which is in and of itself a rarity for most models, a version of the caliber 1300, carrying the logos of both brands and Opus 1 engraved on the off-center rotor. A platinum piece with a very fascinating green dial with orange details. Quite a unique combination of colors that you don't really see all over the place. Certainly not with FP Jean, but also not really with Harry Winston either. Apparently, the Opus 1 project altogether involved 18 pieces, 6 versions of the chronomètre résonance, 6 versions of the tourbillon souverain, and 6 unique versions of the 5-day power reserve self-winding movement, such as this particular example. And this is lot 29.
You got a super chat.
Super chats. Agenor movement for which one? Are we all the way back?
No, I think it's 1 minute.
Wait, what? Which one would be Agenor movement? If we are thinking all the way back to the Van Cleef and Arpels watch, no, Harry Vaughan movement, man. It's the classic automatic movement that he made, the caliber 1300, 5-day power reserve. At that time, quite revolutionary in the sense that it provided 5 days of power reserve at chronometric precision, which wasn't quite common. As you guys know, the gold standard in the industry today for automatic movements is still 3 days, pretty much. So this is, for all intents and purposes, an FP Jaune watch encased in Harry Winston, and that was because the Opus series was practically initiated with this collaboration with FP Jaune, between Harry Winston and FP Jaune, under Max Büsser's guidance, and it involved 18 pieces, 6 resonance pieces, 6 tourbillons, and 6 self-winding pieces like this, each of which was uniquely attired. This one is platinum with a green dial. And at lot 29 at the Toki watch auction, Phillips Hong Kong, it has an estimate that's set between 96,200 to 200,000 in US dollars.
Sorry to say, I'm dead tired. I need to move on. It's always been a joy, and great for everyone who's super chatted. It's been really fun interacting with everyone.
Yeah, it's amazing, Oz. I'm glad you joined again, and aided me in my comeback. I like that you're growing out your locks. Mostly because I don't think you're that great of a barber. I'm extremely jealous of your hair to begin with, but it's I don't think you do such a great job of cutting your own hair. Junior's hair,
No.
Again, I think it's an acceptable standard, but on your own, it's
We'll see.
This
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Oz. Thanks for being here. It was great, as always, collaborating with Oz. I think let's do this. I think I'm gonna go for at least until 11. But if there are another 5 super chats of $5 or more, let's set another goal. If there are another 5 super chats of another $5 or more in the next 45 minutes or so, hopefully earlier, there will be watch talk until midnight. Otherwise, I will leave around 11. But let's continue. That goal can stay in the background. We may or may not reach it, but at any rate, I'm here for the next 30 minutes or so. Earlier, I talked about the Antigua, especially when we were looking at the Otsuka Lotek number 7.5. The Antigua, which is a perpetual calendar and has this steampunk aesthetic as if it were ripped out of Jules Verne novel rather than a watchmaking book, was followed by what was simply called a classic, which is like a brutalist or simply steampunk version of the Cartier Pasha. I've always thought it's certainly an even bolder design than Janta's original, but it's every bit as elegant. Here you see an 18-karat pink gold example of it. The designs were inspired by Captain Nemo's Nautilus with the unique hinged lugs that kind of speak to the lug design of the Cartier Pasha, which originally was, of course, Louis Cartier's own Vendôme styled lugs. The dial itself is a multi-level design with beautifully distinguished details, frosted and polished surfaces, flame blued hands. $250 pieces in pink, yellow, and white gold with different sorts of dials. The dials themselves are made of gold. And really, with all these details of finishing, look just as precious as the rest of the watch, as the rest of the case. I love the beaded details on the bezel that are kind of matched by the grip on the beaded crown as well. And the movement itself is fantastic because you get all the benefits of a self-winding movement with the display of a hand-wound movement, right? You get a full view of all the bridges, but thanks to the mystery rotor movement, which is a full rotor movement, but with a sapphire center, and the movement base is a modified Lemania caliber 8810, which is renamed here VH100 by Vianney Alter. Again, it's a double barrel movement with the oscillating weight that pivots on a transparent sapphire crystal, so you get an unimpeded view of the movement's decoration. This is an example of the Vianney Alter's classic in pink gold. Jilden, $2. Did RL rip this? Ralph Lauren rip this? You mean the Antigua? Or the classic, rather? I don't know. You would have to give me an example of what. But if there is anything that Ralph Lauren does that looks similar to this, it's probably inspired by Cartier Pasha than Vianney Alter's classic, I have to say. But coming back to Lot 31, it makes an appearance here specifically because it comes as a full set, originally retailed by Hirano Montre, which is a multi-brand retailer based in Nagoya, Japan. And apparently part of that full set is a cleaning cloth bearing the personal signature of Monsieur Vianney-Alter, which is certainly a nice touch, a nice detail, as you can see here. The pre-auction estimates, the estimated value of lot 31 is in the range between 25,600 to 46,200. Again, we have our goal of 5 more super chats of $5 or more for the discussion to extend until midnight. But even if we don't make it, we have about 20-25 minutes left. At lot 33, we have De Bethun's take, a high horological take on what is called the John Player Special. Of course, the original inspiration for that nickname for a wristwatch comes from the livery of Lotus Racing that came from the famous cigarette brand, John Player Special. And it was initially given, I forget his name, but he goes by Watch Guru on Instagram, and he is in fact one of the probably most storied dealers of watches of UK origin. Thomas Bolt, yes, that's his name. I think Thomas Bolt came up with that nickname first for gold Rolex Daytonas that have black dials. So that color scheme, when it was adopted and interpreted for a De Bethune piece, was kind of captured for this black zirconium and titanium piece. A version of the DB28, specifically GSV2JPS, a limited series of 50 pieces. With those golden details that give the watch its distinct aesthetic. The piece actually has a manual dial lighting system, kind of what you have in electronic watches, but actually something that is mechanically winding. Number 23 of 50 pieces here. With the pierced lug design, again with the golden details. And the floating lugs that hinge at 3 and 9 o'clock, and that allowed the watch to sit as close to the wrist as possible. This JPS version of the Grand Sport line was released itself in 2022. and there's a button at 6 o'clock that you can press again for that manual wind. Dial lighting system. And this watch was consigned by its Japanese owner. Again, golden titanium balance wheel with the white gold inserts, which is designed to optimize for temperature differences. The Dubitune balance spring with the flat terminal curve, the triple parachute shock absorbing system, and the patented self-regulating twin barrels, which ensure a 5-day power reserve. This is Dubitune's sports watch in this combination of black and gold that is inspired by the John Player Special livery, and of course by the John Player Special moniker that was taken up for gold Rolex Daytonas, lot number 33, with an estimated value of 50,000 to 100,000 US dollars. Thank you, Gildan. The one Scorsese is wearing. Are you looking on my Instagram? Rip, what exactly? I love this. But going back to my own page, you mean this watch? Rip what? I don't know. I mean, not really. There are any number of bezels with exposed screw details nowadays in watch design. And when we were looking at the classic, those are not even screws, if that's what you were referring. Those are like polished beads. Quite a different design. Most of the Ralph Lauren watch collection, by the way, don't necessarily feature terribly original designs. But then again, you can kind of broaden that into the entire range of Ralph Lauren clothing and accessories. There's nothing new under the sun. It's usually the kind of combinations, variations, colors that he puts them in, and the kind of storytelling that emerges in each season's collection that characterizes Ralph Lauren, right? You know, it's never for bold designs that are terribly original. And I'm not trying to bash Ralph Lauren for nothing, but certainly that particular watch design is not their most derivative, I have to say. All right, let's try to cover a couple more watches. I think I owe you the watch I put on my thumbnail, which is lot 27. It's one of those lots that start at no reserve, meaning in a way that it's one of those watches again that are supposed to attract those early bids seem like, they seem attractively priced at first look, but they can also end up being some of the better performing watches at the end of the day when all is said and done. Universal Genève, as you know, is in the process of a revival. Guided by Georges Kern, who is the current CEO of Breitling, of course, since the rights to the name was bought by the same ownership group. And very recently, they had this special event with a flight to Copenhagen that introduced a new version of the pole router, because it was the 70th anniversary of that design, which was given to Universal Genève by a youthful Gérard Genta. This is perhaps more a signature Universal Genève design / complication, the tri-compacts. It's a watch that they introduced as an anniversary watch in 1944. But of course, what you're looking at is kind of the 60s generation, a version of which is most famously associated with Eric Clapton, the one with the panda dial specifically. The reverse of that is usually called Evil Clapton, or Evil Clapton, if you really want to be English about it. It's, I think, a very beautiful watch that appeals to collectors of chronographs, of vintage watches in so many ways. I think the tachymeter bezel inserts, the color combinations of the dials, the case design itself, which has those twisted lyre lugs that are perhaps more famously associated with the Speedmaster. In each case, they were made by the famous case maker Higgin & Frère. In this case, you also have a tropical dial that has turned into this very soft, light shade of brown that's quite attractive. Hey, Young Kim. It's nice to see you, man. This, that, Lord this, Lord that. Yeah, I love it. And in this case, it's also matched. The case is also matched with a Guerre bracelet. So quite desirable without the extra kind of dealer speak marketing sheen of the tropical dial. The original tri-compacts, the 40s version, has its own fans. I'm one of those. The 50s iterations have also in the past attracted many collectors. The 60s one is perhaps the most mainstream one. Again, not only because of the association of the celebrity stardust that comes with Eric Clapton, who is also one of the most respectable and influential watch collectors of our time. Make no mistake about that. I think it's also the design details, the panda and reverse panda dials, even the exotic dials, the tachymeter bezels, the case design, the Gefrère bracelets too that sometimes match them. I think all of this makes for a very attractive package for the Universal Genève tri-compacts, triple calendar chronographs from the 60s. Pardon me, and this example has a tropical version of the Evil Clapton dial with an estimated value of 10,000 to 20,500 in US dollars for lot 27, which will be starting at, in fact, with no reserve. There's, I think, an exotic dial version somewhere down there. Let's take a quick look at that. And I think after that, I want to look at a couple more watches from Japanese makers, perhaps, to at least close out today's show. Tomorrow, we will have a great unboxing with my friend Big Basil's Bezels, hopefully at an earlier time, which might be attractive to perhaps even more of you. We're looking once again at a 60s Universal Tri-Compacts. Once again, you can call this perhaps an exotic Clapton because everything else is quite reminiscent. But this time you have like a deep blue backdrop and blue details on the minutes, seconds track. Once again, the stainless steel case is matched with a Gefrère bracelet. And in this case too, because exotic dials are rare, more rare compared to their panda and reverse panda counterparts, you can, for the most part, assume that this piece, in fact, would command a bigger premium than what we have seen. The lot essay says that there are about 26 examples known, less than 30, let's say. I don't know if it's in fact that rare, but they are quite rare. The lot essay again states that the dial is slate gray. I thought it was more like a deep blue, but I think it's fair to trust their eyes since they have examined it actually in person. French calendar for this one, and as you can see, those date wheels are written out in red, matching with a red chronograph hand. And this was also consigned by a Japanese collector, lot number 81. The condition seems quite good. And that was the case also with the so-called Evil Clapton that we have just looked at. One of the things that I love, of course, about the tri-compacts is how the moon phase indicator takes the center stage because it's situated at 12 o'clock rather than perhaps what is more common at 6 o'clock. I always love those. I love that about a tri-compacts, whether it's a 40s example or like you see a 60s example here. That is lot 81 from the Phillips Hong Kong Toki watch auction, which focuses on the culture of collecting from Japan. And the pre-auction estimate is set between 120,000 to 200 Hong Kong dollars. That is about 15,400 to 25,700 in US dollars. I want to look, as I promised, at maybe 2 more watches and then close it for the night. But when I come back tomorrow, we will do an unboxing and maybe a double unboxing with Basil's bezels. And after that, we will jump onto our nightly live stream and perhaps close out the preview of this auction as well. I did mention that I wanted to look at some Japanese pieces. So let's do perhaps one Seiko and one Naoyahida and leave some of the others for tomorrow night's show. Lot 40 is a very interesting piece. In a lot of the stories of Swiss watchmaking, of course, the Seiko is cast in the role of the villain, right? Especially when it comes to the quartz crisis, with the proliferation of industrially made quartz-powered watches. The industry experienced one of the worst crises that it has in its entire history. And obviously, Seiko, being one of the pioneers, being one of the makers on the vanguards for quartz-powered watchmaking, is usually understood to stand on the hither side of this mechanical aspiration towards chronometric precision. But Seiko, of course, has itself had a tradition of entering Swiss chronometry competitions, and this is still something that they aspire to in terms of creating, say, like the Grand Seiko Kodo Tourbillon, which won the chronometry award a couple of years back in the GPHG. And this perhaps piece can be seen as one of the prime examples of Seiko's tradition of rivaling the chronometric precision of Swiss mechanical watches. When Seiko first participated in the Observatoire Cantonal de Neuchâtel's competition, the Neuchâtel Observatory's competition in 1963, they became the first non-Swiss brand to place in the top 10. And even though they ceased such competitions in 1968, which is a signal date, of course, they continued to test and certify observatory-level, observatory-grade chronometers. Seiko submitted at that same year 103 examples of its caliber 4520 movements for certification. These were high beat movements running at 36,000 semi-oscillations per hour. And a large number of these over the years, dozens, if not hundreds, passed similar observatory tests with increasing level of success. And this piece, which is branded as Astronomical Observatory Chronometer Officially Certified, is a watch that carries one of those calibers, one of those hand-wound, high-beat calibers 4580. It is a yellow gold cushion-shaped piece, 36 millimeters in diameter, with a kind of linen dial, you might say, kind of a hatched grain decoration on the case as well, which beautifully meshes with the dial, creating somehow an integral design, as it were. This particular piece has a display case back, which allows, of course, for a unique view of this chronometer grade hand-wound movement, which is not the most handsome, but certainly quite marvelous. Oops. And it does also arrive. Thank you, C3D. Now, I appreciate this additional super chat as well. I really, really love it. I'm so grateful for your support, everyone who has chipped in tonight. As you guys know, again, this channel has no masters, no sponsors, is not beholden to any industry interests, not sponsored by any watch brands, any auction houses, and thus gives you the best and most independent, most unbiased coverage of all the happenings in the world of watches. And since it serves its audience exclusively, it is also, in a way, beholden to your support as well. And I really survive first and then hopefully thrive with your contributions, so they are much appreciated. Coming back to lot 40, which is this astronomical observatory chronometer certified by the Neuchâtel Observatory, made by Seiko, presented in a beautiful cushion-shaped yellow gold case from the 1970 with their hand-wound caliber 4580, is presented here on a certificate that comes from the Seiko Museum, where it was apparently exhibited for a few months after receiving service. And it has a pre-auction estimate that is set in the range between 20,500 to 39,700. A beautiful piece, very fitting, of course, for this auction as well. To close off tonight's coverage of the Phillips Hong Kong Toki auction that focuses on the Japanese culture of collecting watches, We're looking at lot 115, which is probably the hottest independent maker coming out of Japan. Again, not necessarily the most daring or the most horologically innovative. I think those are the kinds of lavish praise and laudations that we can reserve for some other independent makers from Japan, including, but not limited to, of course, sorry, I just had to respond to this. Including, but not limited to, the work of the independent maker Hajime Asaoka, for example. But now Yahida, especially because of its classical styling and the hand-engraved details on the dials, have enjoyed quite a bit of popularity among collectors. And of course, the fact that they are made in extremely limited number and because they're essentially application pieces only, I think enhances the mystique around them and the desirability of their watches. In this case, you have an example of Type 1D-2 from around 2024. The brand itself, again, was established in around 2018. And they make probably less than 100 watches a year, maybe right around that number. So that exclusivity, that limited production certainly increases their appeal for a lot of collectors who want something unique, who want to wear something that they won't necessarily see on the next collector's wrist. Again, this is a watch that is modeled after, 30s classical dress watches with a modified Vajou movement, which incidentally has the small seconds at 9 o'clock, as you can see in this example of Type 1D2, 37 millimeter yellow gold case, which is, I think, very nicely proportioned for a watch in this genre, for a dress watch, a German silver dial, beautifully finished in satin and microbead blasted surfaces, handcrafted domed gold hands, which, as you can see, are a very fine detail of their design. Kind of a pearl track for the minutes with fine yellow gold dots that obviously match the case. And the Breguet numerals are, I believe, hand inked with synthetic urushi lacquer. after they are, of course, hand engraved by a master who is specific to that task. So once again, you have a piece that is limited in number, has quite fine hand-made and hand-applied details. In this case, the price point is quite a bit higher compared to what we were looking at, the Otsuka Lotek, which has a number of pieces, a few pieces, in fact, in this auction. But now Yehida certainly also is a finer specimen belonging to perhaps a category of watches that would appeal to a wider selection of collectors in more ways than one. This is apparently the first example of the 1D-2 to appear on the public auction. And there will be a custom engraving for this virtually unworn piece. It will be complimentary, specifically dedicated to this Phillips watch auction, and decided by the winning bidder. So that person will be granted the opportunity to work with Mr. Yehida and his team to personalize this particular piece. This is lot number 115 for a Yehida 1D-2. The first one to be offered on public auction, with a pre-auction estimate that is set between 35,900 to 61,500 in US dollars. Thank you, everybody, for being with me on this beautiful night. We have covered a nice part of the Phillips Hong Kong watch auction that's coming up, and that focuses on the Japanese culture of collecting watches. We are going to be back tomorrow with not one, but two different live streams. I'm going to post them sometime during tomorrow. The first one is going to be dedicated to an unboxing, possibly a double unboxing, with our friend and community member, Basil's Bezels. You have seen him, you know him. He has participated many times in such unboxings and other kinds of content on this channel. So I look forward to welcoming him back. And then we will have the night's live stream, hopefully covering the rest of a lot of the interesting watches in this auction. And there are many, many that we haven't yet covered. Please hit the like button on the way out. And thank you again for welcoming me back so enthusiastically. See 3D now, especially with not one, not two, but 4 super chats tonight. Gilden with 2 super chats of his own. Sean with 2 GD. Sean again, and Chalk flew up as well. Thank you so much for these contributions. It is Hajime Asoka is the person who owns Chrono Tokyo as well. That's kind of his more accessible line of serially produced watches. He himself is an independent watchmaker that makes a very limited number, with the most famous model being the tsunami. But we'll get back to that. I'm not sure actually if there is an Hajime Asoka watch as part of this auction, but hopefully there is. If not, we'll carve out some space and time to talk about them, to talk about him tomorrow. In either case, I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you again for your presence and support. Subscribe if you haven't. If you have chanced upon this broadcast somehow, this is a channel completely independent that mostly live streams, but also produces all sorts of content on wristwatches, that centers on collecting cultures, on the kind of knowledge that we collectively create, and on the kind of passion we generate around wristwatches. So feel free to give at least a like, share the link with friends, other watch enthusiasts, other collectors. Help me get to my next threshold. We are almost there at 2.5, but we're looking well ahead already. Follow me on Instagram. If nothing else, again, just giving a like on every video that you watch is more than enough. But after the live stream is done, please leave a comment as well. That boosts things a little bit, that puts the video in front of more eyeballs. The likes and comments are fundamental when it comes to that. I'll see you tomorrow in another live stream. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.